Now please welcome Keith Long.
Thank you, folks. We're at the halfway point of the memorial service. Hello, Joanna, family, friends, and esteemed guests from as far away as China, Mexico, Taiwan, and Galveston Island. On behalf of my siblings, I'd like to share with you all a few stories about growing up with Dr. Ted Wong. But first, if you look in the back of the funeral program, you'll see that there's a recipe for Dr. Wong's world's most expensive bread. He didn't call it best, he called it most expensive because he was pretty sure that his hourly rate exceeded that of any other baker in the world. You'll also notice that the recipe is really just a list of ingredients. My only guess is that it took my dad almost 10 years to perfect his recipe. So why should it take you any less time? Good luck. 22 years ago, Ted Chi Wong was born in the Republic of Taiwan, in a city just outside of Taipei, which makes sense because he definitely had a Type A personality. For those of you who don't know, my brother and sister followed in his footsteps to become physicians. However, I did not. I do like to think, however, that I inherited some of his sense of humor, so I can assure you the jokes will only get worse from here. Ted Wong worked hard. He took his work seriously, and he expected the same from everyone around him. God help the plastic surgery residents who would follow him on rounds. I remember they would arrive at our doorstep, fresh-faced and chipper. "Good morning, Dr. Wong," they would say. To which he would reply, "I said be here at 8 o'clock, not 7:59, not 8:01, not 8:02. And depending on his mood, he would count as high as 8:12 or 8:13. That is how their day would begin. "Always remember," Dad would tell us kids, "there is no greater motivation than fear." He would often say this while standing in the middle of our living room, hands on his hips, like Yul Brynner in The King and I, screaming, "Now clean this area up!" Yes, Dr. Wong could be a little rough around the edges, but he did have a softer side. In fact, many of his staff and fellow physicians adored him. They gave him fun and lovable nicknames like Dr. Ted, and Dr. Huang, and Dr. Ted Wong. And after spending 15 years down in Mexico, those doctors gave him nicknames too, like El Dr. Ted, and Dr. Huang, and Dr. Ted Wong. But to fully understand Dr. Wong and the legacy of his work, I recommend watching the movie Hero Dreams of Sushi. It's a documentary film about the greatest sushi chef in all of Japan. That's a bold statement. In the movie, Hero talks about the concept of shokunin. It's a Japanese word that means craftsman or artisan, but like a lot of Japanese words, it has a much deeper meaning. This is how Hero describes it. I love that. The way of shokunin is to repeat the same thing every day. Once you decide your occupation, you must immerse yourself in your work. You have to fall in love with your work. Never complain about your job. You must dedicate yourself to your mastering your skill. This is the secret of success, and this is the key to being regarded honorably. This is the spirit of the shokunin. I know my dad identified with this movie very much because after we watched it together, he actually went out and bought a copy of it for himself on DVD. The last movie my dad bought was on a Betamax cassette. In a single word, my dad was pure shokunin. He commanded respect, and he carried himself with supreme confidence. So much so that one of his plastic surgery residents during skit night dubbed him the Yellow Emperor. I do not know where that plastic surgery resident is today. But in fact, and this is a 100% true story, a fortune teller once told my grandmother that my dad was, quote, almost a Buddha. That is to say, through some strange time and space time continuum mishap, my dad was almost reincarnated as the Buddha. However, it should be noted that the same fortune teller said this partly because, quote, my dad had large earlobes. Bodhisattva indeed. But like the Buddha, Dr. Wong did possess great wisdom. And he very often distilled this wisdom into one phrase, which was, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Around our house, he said it for just about everything. Hey, Dad, I got a parking ticket. I'm sorry, Craig, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Hey, Dad, Mom said I'm grounded for a week. I'm sorry, Keith, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Hey, Dad, we're expecting twins. Congratulations, Tanya, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Looking back on it, I'm pretty sure my dad didn't know how to use idioms. Regardless, he was fearless in his speech, accent and all. And he was never hesitant to tell you exactly how he felt about any given situation. One time he got pulled over on his way to Maitland Center Hospital. He was on an emergency call, but the cop gave him a ticket anyway. Of course, Dad got the last word. I hope I don't see you in the emergency room. Because you will wait. There was one phrase, however, that Dad was not very good at saying. For as long as I can remember, my dad rarely said the phrase, I love you. To give you some idea, I think he said it to us about as often as he took off a day from work. But to be frank and fair, it just wasn't part of his repertoire. However, that's not to say that he didn't have love. He had a lot of love. He just had a different way of expressing it. He mostly chose to express his love through giving medical advice. One summer, my family got together, and while I was home, I showed him a bunion on my foot. A few days later, I received this email from him, and I swear this is verbatim. Dear Keith, I noticed a slight angulation of your big toe, and you are right. You are developing a bunion. This is caused by pulling of the tendon that is affecting the joint structure. The use of a splint is effective only if it is applied early in the course of change. Surgical alternative is possible, but not always successful. It was nice to see everyone in Galveston. We will do it again in a year, if not sooner. I think I speak for all of us here when I say that we are all going to miss Dr. Wong's medical advice. I know my dad loved us, and he loved our mother too, Rebecca Magpayo Wong. More than 20 years ago, he delivered her eulogy, and I remember a story he told. After dating for a long time, they discussed marriage, but my mother initially declined. My dad thought it was because she was worried about the red tape they would face because she hadn't yet become an American citizen. But he was completely wrong. My mother said she didn't want to marry him because, quote, I do not want to support a medical student. Of course, they did make it work. And they were married for 30 years before we lost our mother to cancer. And so today we must say goodbye to our dad too. Joanna, you and Calvin Little were with Dad in his final moments. We were grateful to you that he was not alone when he passed. And Joanna, I know you said you wish you could have done more to save him in that final frightful moment. But the truth of the matter is this. Joanna, you did save him. Years ago. My siblings and I we tried to take care of Dad as best we could. But it wasn't easy because Dad, he wanted nothing more than for each of his kids to pursue our own careers, regardless of wherever that took us. And unfortunately, it took us away from home and away from him. Before you arrived, Joanna, we struggled. I know that Dad struggled. We all struggled, even with all the love and support that came from all sides. So yes, Joanna, you saved him many times over. And we are more grateful than we could ever say. Sentimentality was not my dad's strong suit. He approached life and death like a scientist, like a physician, with complete objectivity. One time my brother got in a minor car accident, and of course my dad lectured him for 4 or 5 hours. He told him, if you continue to drive recklessly, one of these days you could die. You could get a serious record, you could die. And when you die, we will be sad. We will cry for a while. But let me tell you, Chief, eventually life will go on, because that is what life does. So yes, Dad, life will go on. Life will go on, and the hundreds and thousands of children and patients you saved. Life will go on in the work and pursuit of knowledge to which you dedicated your life. Life will go on in the family that you and Mom started thousands of miles from your homes in the Philippines and Taiwan. You did so much good in this world, Dad. I just wish you could be here to see how much of an impact you had on all of us. But hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Thank you.